Hey guys, and welcome back to another Django tutorial. So in today's video, what we're going to be doing is going through databases. So how to set up databases, add entries, retrieve entries, all that kind of stuff. This will be kind of a beginner-ish tutorial on databases. I'm not going to be going through absolutely everything as there's a ton of stuff to cover, but I will give you guys a very good foundation and pretty much everything you actually need to be able to use the database. And then obviously you could probably look up some more stuff if you need that in the future. Now the database that we will be using is SQLite3. Now there is other kinds of databases that you can use, but if you're a beginner and for our purposes, SQLite is just the best and easiest to use. It doesn't really make a massive difference if you use the other ones. However, if you'd like to use those, go ahead, and I will be showing you briefly how you can actually change your database. Now, the reason I'm not going into templates and more advanced HTML right now is because likely the information that we're storing in our database is actually what we're going to be wanting to show within our models, within our templates and HTML. So it kind of makes sense to make the information first and then display it afterwards within templates and all that. So we're not kind of redundantly typing things and modifying things later. So with that being said, let's get started. Now, our first step when we're going to be working with the database is we actually need to modify our settings.py file inside of our interior my site directory. Now, to do this, obviously, we're just going to go to settings.py. What we need to do is we need to scroll down to installed apps. We need to add our application, in this case called main for me, to our installed apps. And the reason we need to do this is because when we're going to be working with databases and just some things in the future, we need to tell Django that we have another application that has some dependencies and things that need to be set up inside of our project. So to do this, what we're going to do is just go single quotes right at the end of this, wherever the comma is. And we're just going to type the name of our application. In this case, mine's called main. Yours might be called something else. And then we're going to type .apps. And then main config. And then add a comma after that. Now, obviously, if yours is named something else, you're going to change this. So you'd add a capital letter for whatever the name is, and then, yeah, just put it there, and that'll work for you. Okay, so we've done that, and now we've told Django that we actually have this application main, and we need it to be configured and set up when we make some modifications to our project and stuff like that. So the next thing that we actually have to do is we need to get into our my site directory, so the same directory that has that manage.py file in it, and we have to run the following command, which is python manage.py and then migrate. Now, when you type this, yours should likely pop up like a bunch of text that says making migrations, making changes. Now, since I've already done this, because I was testing it before, it's not showing up for me, but yours should do that. What I've just done here essentially is said we've updated the settings.py file. So let's run manage.py and get it to make any changes to the project that it might need to do. And that's as far as I'm kind of going to explain that. All right, so we've done that. And now we're actually ready to start defining some of our models for our database. So if you don't know how a database works, essentially it's just a collection of information. And what we're going to be doing is defining some models and some attributes that kind of go with each of the models. And the model is just a way of, well, modeling information, and it makes it just easier for us to grab information, and we can add attributes to those models. We can add some methods to them. You guys will see how it works in just a second. But essentially, if we want to create a model, what we're going to do is we're just going to create a class with the name of our model, and we're going to inherit it from models.model, which is like a database model class set up from Django already. Now, for this application that I'm going to write, I want to create a to-do list. So to do this, I'm going to create two models, one which is a to-do list, and then the other one which is items that go on our to-do list. And you guys will see how this works in a second. So I'm just going to say class to-do list. Like this, and it is going to inherit from models.model. Now, this essentially means that we're creating a database object, which is called to-do list, and now we're going to define some of the attributes and entries that each model to-do list is going to have. So for our to-do list, I want to have a name, so I'm going to say name is equal to, and in this case, models.char field. And I'm going to say max_length equals 200. Now, whenever we create a new attribute or, just attribute of our information of our model, what we do is we create it as a class variable, and we simply do the name of the attribute, and then we have to do the type of field that we want to be stored in our database. All right, guys, I'm back. Just had to take a quick cut there because I was getting a phone call. But what I'm going to do now is just define a method. We'll just call this str. And I'm just going to put self in here and simply return self.name, just so that if we ever want to print this out or see what it actually looks like, we can get some meaningful text by using the string method on that. So next, what we're going to do is define our other model, which is item. So same as before, this will inherit from models.model, and this is going to have some attributes as well. Now, item is a little bit different just because it's actually related to to-do list, and we're going to have items as a part of our to-do list. So to do this, again, what we're going to do is simply say to-do list equals, and in this case, we'll say models.foreign key, and then in here, we're going to type to-do list like that, and we're going to say on delete equals models.cascade. Now, the reason we're doing this is because remember how, like, up here we have character field, right, which is a type of field that we could store information in. Well, we don't actually know the type of field, or Django doesn't know the type of field that to-do list is, because it's an object that's not defined within Django. So we have to define the fact that we're going to use a foreign key, in this case a to-do list object, when we create an item. Okay, and that's what we're doing. Now, on delete is just saying, well, if we delete to-do list, since all items exist on a to-do list, we're going to have to delete these as well. And I believe that's what onCascade is doing, is just defining the fact that this has a special way of being removed. Okay, so our next attribute is going to be name. So I'm going to say, or sorry, not name, it'll be text. And text is going to be equal to a character field as well. And a character field is essentially just a string. Note that you do need this max length whenever you create a character string, so make sure you add that. In this case, let's just make that 300. And now we will add one more field, which will be a Boolean field. So models.Boolean field, and it'll just represent whether or not we've completed the item on our to-do list. Same thing here for string, so self, and we'll just return the text, so return self.text. Now remember, in the future we can add to these models and modify them, so for now I'm just keeping it simple. We don't need anything too complex. Alright, so now that we've done that, we've modified our models, we actually have to tell Django that we've modified our models. And to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we're in that same directory, so my site. We're going to say python manage.py make migrations, and in this case we'll put the name of our app, which is main. Now yes, that's okay, so this should work, and let's hit enter here and see what we get. All right, so there we go. So now when you do that, you should see something that says migrations for, and then the name of your app, which should be main. It says we created a model to-do list and we created a model item. Now, making migrations is similar to like adding something to the staging area in Git. If you don't know what this is, don't worry, but it's similar to version control in that we make a change, it'll save the change, and then we can actually apply that change to our project. So if I want to apply this change, right now I've only made it. I haven't actually applied it. What I have to do is go python manage.py and then migrate. And there we go, it says applying migrations, and it has applied the migrations. And you should see, if you go inside of your migrations folder, inside of your app, you should get something that looks like this. And you can see if you actually open it up, it tells you the exact migrations or changes that were made. In case we have ID, ID is automatically added for all of the different models that you create as a field. We have the name, which is a character field. We have text, complete, and to-do list. There we go. So that's kind of how that works. It's nice because you can go back and view previous changes and then obviously revert to other changes by just using those files. So yeah. All right, so now that we've done that, what's actually next is to add some things into our database. So right now we have a fully functioning database, and I'm going to show you how we can add stuff to it. Now, the easiest way to show you is just from the command line, because we'll just mess around with a few different commands, get the syntax down, and then start doing stuff from code. So to get into a command line, what I'm going to do is just go python manage.py and then shell. This will open up our Python shell for us, which will allow me to add some things into the database. Now, our first step is we're just going to import our models so that we can use some of the methods, and we can actually use those models to create objects and store them in the database. So I'm going to say from, and in this case, main.models, because we're not in that main directory, we'll import, what's the name of our models? We have item and we have to-do list like this. There we are. So from main.models, import item and to-do list. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create a to-do list and add it to the database. And this is really easy to do. So I'm just going to say T, which is going to be our to-do list, will be to-do list. And then in here, I'm just going to give it a name, and I'll say name equals, and in this case, let's just say Tim's, like that, list. Sweet. So Tim's list, and hit enter. Now, if we want to save this into the database, watch how easy this is. T.save. And we have actually now saved this into the database. And if I want to see all of the different objects, what I can do is I can say to-do list, if I can get the capitalization correct, .objects.all. And if I do that, you can see we get a query set and it says to-do list, Tim's list. And there we go. We've successfully stored one to-do list in our database. So to get all of the to-do lists that we have, I just did objects.all, and obviously .objects is just giving all the objects, and .all is actually going to give me like a query set, which will allow me to access objects. Now, each of our objects have IDs associated with them, and they have that name attribute associated with them. So if I want to see the ID of some of my objects, what I can do is I can say to-do list, and I believe I can say .get, and then in here I can say ID equals, and then in this case the ID is going to start at 1 and it's going to increment as you add more objects. But if I do that, type object to-do list has no attribute get. Oh, I believe we might have to do .objects.get. .objects.get. There we go. So if I do .objects.get and I put the ID, which is the thing that I'm looking for, ID 1, you see we get a to-do list and it says Tim's list. Now, if we didn't put that string thing here, string method inside of to-do list, it wouldn't be saying Tim's list. It would be giving us like a memory address. Awesome. So we have that. Now, if we want to query by like name, so what this is doing, querying just means like getting all of the objects that contain the key you're putting. What I can do is just say name equals, in this case, and say Tim's list like that. And obviously it's going to give me Tim's list. Now, if I try to query for something that doesn't exist, like I say ID equals 2, you see we get an issue because there's no query that exists for ID 2. If I wanted that to work, I would have to add another item into the database. Sweet, so that's kind of how you do some of that. Now, if we want to create an item, what we can do for items is actually really nice, is we can just, let's see the best way to actually make an item is, let's see this. We're going to do T dot, and in this case we're going to say item underscore set, and if I print this out and I do dot all like this, you're going to see we get an empty query set. Now notice I did item underscore set, right, which would be an attribute of our to-do list, T, right, because we created a to-do list here, we saved it, so the T object is still there, but I said item underscore set, but I haven't defined item underscore set in here. What this is because I've added this relation between items and to-do list, each to-do list automatically is going to have a set that stores a bunch of different items. Okay, so now the way that we add items into our database is a little bit different than how we create the to-do list. Now, because our items are related to our to-do list, there's a special way that we can create them and create them within our to-do list. So essentially, remember we had that to-do list T. I just tabbed down so there's a bit more space and it's cleaner. But we had that object T, and if I printed that, you can see that's our to-do list, Tim's list. Now, because of the relationship we've created here, what I can actually do is say Tim underscore and then item underscore set dot all, and it actually gives me a set of items, which are exactly these items. And you just reference all of this automatically with a lowercase. That's what it defaults to. And yeah, so essentially there is like a blank placeholder for our to-do list to hold a bunch of items because of what we did here. So if we want to create an item inside of this item set, what we do is we say T dot item underscore set dot create, and then in here we give the parameters that we need for our item. So we need a text and we need complete. So what we'll do is we'll say text equals, and in this case we'll just say like maybe go to the mall, something you have to do, and complete obviously will be equal to false. Okay, so we do that, and now we see we have an item that says go to the mall. So we've done that. Now we've created an item inside of our item set. Now if I do t.item_set and then .all, you can see that we get all of the items. And obviously if I want to get one of the items, then I can say .get, and in this case it'll be ID1. So I say ID1, go to the mall. Again, if I try to do ID2, we're going to run into an issue because ID2 does not exist. All right, so now that we've created one item, or we've created an item in a to-do list inside of our database, what we can do is we can actually display that information from some of our views and start using the web browser to see this information. So the reason I did that from the command line is just because it's going to be a lot faster just to run that and actually add items to our database. Obviously, if we're adding things into our database in future videos, we're probably just going to use our web browser and we'll have like a form where we can input stuff and it'll automatically be added. And that's obviously what we'll be doing later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my views now, and I'm actually just going to get rid of view 1, which means that if I go to URLs, I should remove the path v1. Now what I want to do is I want you to be able to type the ID of a certain to-do list in the address bar, and it pop up the name of the to-do list and the items that exist in that. So to do that, I will briefly show a cool thing that we can do with paths, and we'll elaborate on it in future videos. But essentially, I can actually put these two tags in here and say int, and then in this case, I'll just say ind, or ID standing for ID. And what this means now is what's going to happen is we're going to look for some integer in our path, and we're going to pass that to the function views.index. So that means that index now needs a variable called ID in it. And what I can do is, well, I'll show you basically without the database actually, is if I just put like %id and then, or %s, sorry, and then outside here I do $ID, it will actually, show me whatever number I type in my, like on my web browser. So I closed the command prompt. I shouldn't have done that. 1 second, I just got to cd into my correct directories here. Django cd my site, and then we will just simply run our server so we can test this, and I can show you what I mean. So let's do python manage.py run server. I gotta activate my virtual environment. Apologize about this, guys. Okay, so there we go. So we've got this running now. So let's go to our web browser and let me show you what I mean by this. So if I hit this now, you can see we get an issue because it says that it didn't find admin, or it didn't find some integer, which was an ID. So now if I type 1 in here, so like /1, you can see it actually brings me to a page that says 1. And if I type 3 in here, it brings me to a page that says 3. If I type 4, we get 4. And actually anything that we type in that's a number will just show up in here. So we do like 4, 8, like it shows up there, okay? That's like the first kind of way that we can do dynamic pages in terms of the linking, all right? So what I'm going to do now is I have this ID, obviously. So I don't want to just show the ID, but I want to get the ID of that object as a to-do list from our database. So to do that, what I'm going to do is similar to what I've shown you in the command line. Is I'm going to start by importing our models. So in this case, I can just say from .models import, and then in this case, we'll just import to-do list, because actually we might need item as well. So we'll import item as well. So we'll do to-do list and item. And what I'm going to do is get that to-do list based on the ID. So I'm going to say that, I'll say ls is equal to to-do list dot objects dot get, and then in this case we'll say ID equals ID. Right, so now we have that to-do list object, and now instead of printing the ID, let's print the name of our to-do list. So I can just say ls dot name. So now we should have made a modification, and it should have just, our server's running, it should have just automatically changed. Let me just copy this link again, and if I bring up my tab, oh, it's already there. So if we do this and just change this ID to 1, now you can see that we actually get Tim's list. Because again, the way this works is we go to URLs, we type some number, it gets that number, it passes it through this function as the value ID. We're just going to say, we're going to go a similar thing we did in the command line. We'll to-do list, we'll get all of the objects of type to-do list, we'll get the one that has ID 1, and then we will simply take the name of that and print it to the screen or show it on the screen. Now again, I could change this from ID and I can make it name, and I can make the name like Tim's list, so you'd have to type that in to get it. So I mean, we can show that as well. So in this case, let's just do string, and then we'll do name. And now we'll just have to make sure that when we type it in our link bar here, that we actually type everything correctly, and make sure I save all this too. We type the name exactly like this. So if I copy that and I put this here, you can see that again, it's showing up Tim's list and we're not running into any issues. But if I try to do like 2 here, you can see that we're getting an issue because there's nothing with the name 2 in our database. Awesome, so that's pretty straightforward. That's how we get items and show them on the screen. In the next video, we'll do way more advanced stuff with this. But if I want to get the items that are associated with the to-do list and show those as well, what I can do is, well, let's go back to, no, we'll just leave it as name because we don't need to change it now. We'll get the items. So to get the items, we're going to say items equals, and then in this case, to-do list, or actually ls, because we've already got the to-do list, dot item underscore set, and then dot all. And then what we can do is we know we only have 1 item, so let's just get the first item. So I guess we just do dot get, and then ID equals 1. And what we'll do is change this percent, we'll add another one, and we'll simply say item dot name, or items dot name, I guess. This should probably just be item. We'll say item dot name, or dot text. My apologies. Okay, so now that we have item.text here, we got to add another percent in here. So I'm just going to put another tag. I'm just going to say BR, and then, what do you call it? BR, just standing for go to the next line. And we'll add another tag. This case is just going to be a P tag, and we'll just put %s like that. So now if I go back to my bar here, and instead of doing T, I do Tim's list, and I hit enter. What's the issue? All right, so I just realized we actually have to just put this string around item.text. Don't know why that is, but apparently that was the issue. So anyways, now if I go back to my web browser and refresh, you can see we get go to the mall. Now, obviously this is a very basic example. I'm gonna make this look a lot better in next videos, and we're not gonna have to do like this kind of weird HTML tagging and whatnot. But that's kind of been it for this video. I hope you guys have an idea on how to use databases. We'll be continually using them, adding things and removing things and all that kind of stuff. So if you are still confused, we will be going through that in the future videos, but I just want to make sure we get everything set up and working for right now. And with that being said, I will see you guys in the next video.